Well, we'll get started. Welcome, everybody. Good morning. This is the panel on advancing critical health issues for veterans. I'm Dr. Jonathan Simons. I'm the CEO and president of the Prostate Cancer Foundation. I'm a director or trustee of FASTCRs. I'm a senior fellow of the Milken Institute, and actually I'm the grandson of a Marine who fought at Bellewood, who's buried at Arlington. I'm the son of an 04 on the USS Saratoga. I'm a physician scientist and cancer scientist in prostate cancer my whole career. And we'll be talking today about what partnerships can do for not just families that have a history of military service or have veterans in them, but what the American people could do for those who've served our country with new forms of partnership. And because I went to medical school, I would be highly oriented towards healthcare and medicine. And today we'll be talking about two very common problems veterans face. PTSD and prostate cancer is the #1 cancer, form of cancer taken care of in the VA. But it's actually whole new models of not just improving the care of veterans, actually, but becoming national models of how we should take care of PTSD in the civilian population and how we should take care of prostate cancer and, in fact, all cancers in all populations. Not every day do people walk around thinking that the Veterans Administration's programs in healthcare could be an opportunity to advance the care of all patients, but we're going to try to make the case that there's a whole new platform for this if we form partnerships. And lastly, partnerships are a very interesting word choice because partner actually comes from partitio, which I just butchered in Latin, but the ancient Latin origin of the word is two parts of the family. So if you're in a partnership, you're part of a family where the land was being divided. But the point is, the core etymology or the root of a partnership is there's a common family, and here it's really the family of all Americans that care for those who've defended and served our country. On the panel, we have Dr. Prudence Fisher. She's Associate Professor of Clinical Psychiatric Social Work at Columbia University College of Physicians and Surgeons. She's a research scientist at the New York State Psychiatric Institute. We have Dr. Isla Garraway, Associate Professor and Director of Research, Department of Urology, UCLA, attending urologist, West LA VA, and 8/8 VA for those who know how healthcare is delivered in the VA. To my left is Deborah Lafer Scher. She's the executive advisor to the secretary, a new job, a new position, but she's most importantly the air boss, basically, of the Center for Strategic Partnerships for the Department of Veterans Affairs. And you'll hear about what the possibilities would be between for corporate philanthropy, individual philanthropy, university philanthropy. And to her left is Ambassador Earle Mack, a major American philanthropist, a board member of the Prostate Cancer Foundation, but importantly also the commissioner, the head of the commission or chairman of the New York Arts Council, but also was the commissioner of the New York Racing Association, which will become quite relevant quite quickly for equine therapy. And we have Peter O'Rourke. He's the chief of staff of the Veterans Administration, U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. He's the air boss for everything that has to do with anything if you were trying to improve the care of a veteran with any health issue. With that, what I'd like to do is start with a video on equine therapy for post-traumatic stress disorder. If we could cue the first video.
The suicide rate for veterans is 22 veterans a day commit suicide because they've given up all hope.
My name is A-Rock Bolanos, and I did 2 combat tours in Iraq. The bullets flying around, there's bombs, there's all sorts of things going on. It's a pretty bad time.
When he came home from being deployed, he was aggravated. He would lose his temper easily. It was being difficult for him to make a transition from the military into the civilians.
People would notice the differences in me, being angry all the time. I was losing relationships, and that's kind of when I decided to be like, hey, there's something going on here. This is not normal. It's just like, why is this happening?
Post-traumatic stress disorder is a very complicated disorder. It's really a disruption of the way our brain processes traumatic memories. We used to think that we need to target our treatment directly to the traumatic memories. We don't do that when we treat patients with horses.
Horses are big mirrors, right? And they pick up what people pick up. They're sort of hyper-vigilant, and the veterans get that.
The animals are pretty intimidating when you first meet them, but you find that their emotions, their fears are kind of reflected in you, and you're both a little hesitant, the horse and the person that's interacting with them. I think that's really reflective also in what the veterans are going through.
It was so important for us to try to come up with a treatment that would be conducted by professional doctors, to draw up a professional program, to have a manual that could be distributed to all of these people that have showed signs of being successful, but not done professionally.
If you're gonna research something, you have to define what it is. And typically in psychotherapy research, you come up with a manual, so you make sure everybody's doing what you say they're doing.
We're helping people learn a new pattern. So that superhighway of behaviors that maybe didn't serve them, we're creating a little off-ramp so that they can learn a new behavior, and then eventually that behavior can become the more common behavior.
Our program, you don't talk about what happened. You talk more about communication, regulating emotions. You don't sit there and keep talking about like what happened to you. We've had very few people drop out of the treatment. They like coming.
I see the changes that it did. The first time he came back from his first experience with the horse, he was very excited and he was very happy, less stressed, and in a very good mood.
My expectations were very low, I'm not gonna lie. But once I started the program, I started noticing the differences. I started noticing when I came home, I wasn't angry or, I wasn't upset.
What's surprising for me is really the magnitude of the effect. We see improved mood, we see reduction in depression, reduction in post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms, and this is really changing the life for many, many veterans.
A horse can help a veteran. Do this program. Get involved. Try something different and think outside the box.
Earle, Ambassador Mack, how did you connect being charitable with the team at Columbia University, which is maybe basically the leading deep science research institution on the amygdala of the brain and the neurobiology of PTSD and trauma?
Well, first of all, I want to thank the military that's here for coming. And it's very refreshing for us to see all your interest in this. And so we want to applaud you. We want to thank you for your service. We love you. We do appreciate what you're doing. And I'm sure that America appreciates it, and we would like to recognize it through our research. I would also like to thank Deborah, Scher, and Peter O'Rourke that care enough about this to come all the way out here. And they're from the VA, as you've heard. They're leading the VA right now because there is no chair or head of the VA. And so thank you all for coming out, and also thank the Milken Institute and thank Prudence and all that's working on this program. I just think this has to be said, and you can see by the presence of the military that they care. And so I've spent 3 years at the New York State Council on the Arts. And during that time, because of budgetary reasons, they took arts education out of the public school system. And so I don't have to tell you how many at-risk kids there are in America, especially in New York. And so these kids, with this new program that Governor Pataki generously gave us $25 million to do, these kids saw that they can dance, they can play an instrument, they can draw, and they can sing, and their grades started to improve across the board. So Rudy Crew, who was the chancellor of the public schools in New York, he had a theory that one side of the brain connects with the other side of the brain, just a theory, and so that was the improvement. These at-risk kids thought, well, we've got the confidence, we can do it, and so we've taken a lot of at-risk kids that would have dropped out, would have committed crimes, and off the street, and so my interest in equine over the years, and obviously my interest in the military. I was on active duty, but I never served overseas theater. Except I did carry the plans from the intermediate missiles to Milden Hall. Anyhow, so so we did some ad hoc studies, and during my role as chairman of the New York State Racing Commission, I saw all these ad hoc programs with equine animals, horses, with thoroughbreds that would be ordinarily taken and slaughtered and sold out to a foreign country that allows horse meat, and those programs showed a lot of promise. And so
you had really like early phase 1 data as a cancer doctor. You had early data, right? Anecdotally.
It wasn't convincing. It was ad hoc. At the Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation, they had a second chance program where they brought these retired thoroughbreds to the prisons, and they had the prisoners or the inmates would show much improvement when they were allowed to mix with horses in the yard. And on top of that, when they got out of prison and couldn't get a job, they went into the equine industry. Fast forward, I called up a friend of mine one day.
This is slide 7. Keep going.
I called up a friend of mine one day who was David Schaffer, and then chairman of the of child psychiatry, and just chatting with him, I said, "Hey, David," at Columbia University Medical Center. I said, "Hey, David, what are you up to?" And David said, "Well, you know, we're so concerned about child suicide." And I said, "You know, a lot of these military that go into the Army are really like children, David, because they're teenagers. They're either going to drop out of high school and get a roof over their head in the military and learn a trade, or they haven't got enough money to go to college, and they graduate from high school and go into the military at 17 or 18. So their minds are, and this is from a layman's standpoint, their minds are not that mature. And so I looked further into this and saw there are 22 suicides every day from our veterans returning from the combat theaters. 22 suicides. 30% of our veterans come back with some form of post-traumatic stress syndrome. 30%. Now, that causes anger, that causes hyper activity, it causes bad reactions, it causes anxiety. You fight with your family, you dismiss your children, you don't get along on your job. And so many veterans come back from the theater, and it's, you know, we salute them and salute them and salute them, but try to find a job, and it's not easy. And so I decided, along with a great staff that David Schaffer put together, which includes Prudence and Eval, and the now chairman, Dr. Jeffrey Lieberman, who's now overseeing this whole project. Jeffrey Lieberman is the chairman of Columbia University Medical Center, Department of Psychiatry. He has 700 doctors working under him. And
So basically, the nation's best in an area of psychiatry and neuroscience, your passion turns into
scientists.
scientists. So why didn't you, Prudence, why didn't you?
So maybe I should pick up. So when Earle came to our division, we had never done equine therapy. We're a department of psychiatry. We didn't do, in fact, nobody in the Columbia department had done really anything with animals. But it was pretty interesting. And when he was talking about the prison program, one of the things we did is we went up and we saw one of these programs at Walk Hill Prison, and I spoke with one of the inmates and also the man who ran the program. And he was remarking about how the people would, you would work with horses rather than, they have other things like jobs that prisoners have. And he would say that he would have several people come in and be very angry, and after a while they wouldn't be. And then I spoke with one of the prisoners, and he told me and actually he was a veteran, and he told me about how he had a real anger management problem and how it had gone away.
And this in cancer would be an exceptional responder. In other words, if you give an experimental drug to a cancer patient and you have you'll hear about this later.
Yeah.
If you have an exceptional response and you're a scientist, you're interested in what were the properties for the exceptional response.
And so we became pretty interested in it. It seemed very interesting, and we went out. And the other reason we were interested in it was because of the high rate of PTSD in veterans. And the fact is that there are a lot of treatments around for PTSD, and many of them work, but they don't work for everybody. And there's a lot of dropout, and there are a lot of people who don't get treatment.
And it could be hurtful.
Yeah. And so why don't they get treatment? Stigma, people don't want to go to talk therapy. A lot of times they don't want to take medication. There's a lot of resistance to getting treatment. And then even when they get treatment, often the treatments, as I said, don't work for everybody. Even if you do like prolonged exposure, which is the one that is probably the most successful, only about 60 to 65% of people get better, right? There's a high dropout rate. It is the kind of treatment, you talk a lot about the trauma, and when you think about PTSD, one of the things is avoidance. You don't want to think about the trauma. So the treatment is doing exactly what you don't want to do. And even people who go through a full course of treatment often have significant symptoms They don't have full-blown PTSD, but they still have a lot of symptoms. So there's a lot of room for alternative treatments.
Slide 8, please.
And so this is, where am I? This is an alternative treatment. So as we said, we came up, we investigated all these programs, and the thing that we found, there was no set way to do equine therapy. So as I said in this thing, to investigate something, you have to define it. So we came up with a manual, and we work with people who do equine therapy. We work with people in our own department who do psychotherapy trials, write manuals. Yuval is a PTSD expert who's also a veteran. And we came up with a treatment that is a non-riding treatment. It's a group treatment because we want to take advantage of a group process. It's an 8-week treatment once a week. Unlike a lot of programs for equine where you just go for a weekend or you go for a week, like a one-shot program.
So like a experimental medicine,
Yeah.
there's a dose and
Yeah.
there's a schedule.
Yeah.
The dose is a horse. The dose is
Interaction with the
leader,
horse.
and
Right.
interaction with the
Exactly
horse.
right.
The schedule is
Is
8
once a-
weeks,
8
once a
weeks.
week for 8 weeks,
Yeah,
right?
for 90 minutes.
For 90 minutes. They
And-
all get an MRI before and after.
Yeah, and then the other thing we do is what a lot of programs don't do is people are very carefully evaluated by staff at Columbia Psychiatry to see whether they have the diagnosis. We use standardized clinical measures. We evaluate them midway through and at the end. So we can actually evaluate if what we're doing is working.
So you have,
This is, excuse me, this is not somebody that's adopted a treatment. And there are lots of pioneers out there that are well-meaning American patriots that want to help our vets. But if they do it the wrong way, it can be hurtful. And what we're studying here at Columbia Medical Center, there's a part of the brain that it's called the amygdala.
amygdala, but he was close.
Amygdala. Rabbi, you can remember it, just say Megillah. And that part of the brain can be healed. And that's what Columbia University is pioneering. So they have evaluation by peer groups. They have a MRI before and after to prove scientifically that you can improve and you are not going to relapse.
So there-
in biotech, if you've got a 26% response rate and you hit that bogey of 26 or 25%, you can get FDA approval. And we anticipate being much higher than that. I'm sorry.
So let's go back a little bit at a civilian level for the neuropsychiatry of this. So you have 50 patients in your phase 2 trial,
Right.
and some are still basically in the study.
Yeah, and we're still recruiting.
And you're doing it at one place
Yes.
with one leader.
Actually not, because one of the things that was very important to me was that it wasn't so specific to the team. So we have 2 different teams, and I observe a lot of the sessions, and it's a very experiential treatment. And if you look at, say, Team 1 versus Team 2, they are following the same manual, but it's very individual, and the therapists are different than each other, but they're still getting the same results.
And what's the exposure time of equine interaction? They're not riding the horse, though,
No.
but they're interacting with the horse. What's
They're
the
in a round pen with, it's a group intervention, so there are 2 horses, 4 to 6 veterans, mental health professional, because PTSD is an illness, an equine specialist, and they're in the pen for 90 minutes. The first session, there's some psychoeducation. It's not a 90-minute session in the pen, the first session, but the other 7, 90 minutes. and they do different activities with the horse, and they build up, you know. So the first session, you're grooming the horse or greeting it, you're doing stuff, and then you're leading the horse, and there's an exercise where you get the horse who's at that point at liberty to go on a tarp, and it's a team activity. So the sessions build on each other as they become more comfortable with the animals.
And the hypervigilance, I think this is very important. The hypervigilance of the horse and basically the manifestation of PTSD as a disease have to basically interact with each other in a way that the result is.
Yeah, it's very interesting because horses by nature are hypervigilant. You know, they're prey animals, they're always sort of like that. And people with PTSD are very hypervigilant. They're always sort of like looking around for danger, feeling that they're dangerous. So if you go into a horse and you're like that, and then the horse is like that, they're like gigantic mirrors. And they get it, right? So they can understand how they're coming across and see and learn the reaction that somebody else has to how they're acting, and see how their acting is being reflected in a large animal. And then they learn a lot about regulating their emotions, like, you know, breathing and then seeing the horse calm down and then feeling calmer in their own bodies.
Just to finish for a second, but there's a feedback as you're improving in terms of managing one sequela of PTSD, the horse is going to basically calm down. So you almost have like a mirror of yourself entering behavior, right?
Yeah, it's
The
like a
horse
giant mirror.
It's a very, it's a very
mirror.
giant mirror, but
So-
it's a form actually of biofeedback.
Yeah. So
We'll come back to one of the things that everyone who's been in the service can understand about scaling in a second, but just right now, when all this data is completed, you'll have 50 patients, 2 sites, 1 standardized.
One site, but 2 teams.
2 teams.
It's in the same
Two trainers in the United States of America.
Yeah.
But a standardized protocol.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So they can understand how they're coming across and see and learn. Right. So they can understand how they're coming across and see and learn the reaction that somebody else has to how they're acting, and see how their acting is being reflected in a large animal. And then they learn a lot about regulating their emotions, like, you know, breathing and then seeing the horse calm down and then feeling calmer in their own bodies.
Just to finish for a second, but there's a feedback as you're improving in terms of managing one sequela of PTSD, the horse is going to basically calm down. So you almost have like a mirror of yourself entering behavior, right?
Yeah, it's
The
like a
horse
giant mirror.
It's a very, it's a
big
very
mirror.
giant mirror, but
So-
it's a form actually of biofeedback.
Yeah. So
We'll come back to one of the things that everyone who's been in the service can understand about scaling in a second, but just right now, when all this data is completed, you'll have 50 patients, 2 sites, 1 standardized.
Generation sequencing, we're able to interrogate tumors on an individual basis and learn what are the genetic changes, the mutations that are driving an individual's cancer. And through that kind of analysis, we can identify the right drugs for the right patients based upon the specific mutation a patient may have.
Christopher Seeley is a man with metastatic resistant prostate cancer, the kind that kills men.
I was in the Navy during the Vietnam conflict. After completing my 4-year hitch in the Navy, I was honorably discharged as a 3rd-class petty officer.
As part of the PCF-VA collaboration, we did deep sequencing of his cancer, and we found that he had a mutation in something called BRCA2. Because we knew he had this, we used a study using DNA-damaging chemotherapy to treat him.
I've been on this chemotherapy regimen now for 4 months, and 2 out of every 3 weeks I'm here for either treatment or follow-up. My expectations coming into this were that realistically, they're dead within a year, or this was going to present a better result. So far, the results have been pretty stellar, particularly to be referred to as an exceptional responder.
His PSA has gone from over 200 to 1. The scans which he had initially, which showed metastatic disease, are now essentially normal. So he's had a complete radiographic response.
If I could jump for joy without, going off camera, I would do it. My love for nature, photography, is, that's sort of my driving motivation. The decision about selling equipment, no, that's off the table now. Now I'm looking forward to the winter migratory birding season, and that's going to start up in less than a month. So I'm ready to go, and I'm ready to keep going.
It's hard to actually put into words, to be honest with you. I mean, we all, every day, hope for a miracle. And this is as close to a miracle as we get right now.
If we could go to slide number 1, Christopher Seeley's still in remission. Less than 1% of Americans, wouldn't matter if you were a CEO on Wall Street, have actually gotten this form of treatment, even though to read the genes costs less than 1 MRI. But we've stood up, you'll see in a second, we've stood up 6 centers with American Philanthropy to do this. Over 4,000 veterans with prostate cancer will be evaluated, running the genes. For those basically patients, if you can match the right medicine to the right genes at the right time, you can put the cancer back into remission. But one of the leading centers, really one of the models of its kind in this partnership, is at the West LA VA. Dr. Garraway, why don't you talk a little bit about what precision urology and precision oncology is, and why it's a model starting with the most common cancer in the VA for how all cancer could be taken care of.
I think I have.
You're all mic'd up.
I'm mic'd up, yeah. Well, thank you so much, Jonathan, for inviting me to be on this panel. I've been serving veterans with prostate cancer for 21 years at the VA. Throughout my residency training, it was an integral part of my residency training, and then for 13 years, I've been an attending physician in urology, and it's been an amazing experience. There's no place I'd rather be. I've been affiliated with the Prostate Cancer Foundation for 13 years. When I started as an attending physician in urology at the VA, I was also appointed at UCLA and in prostate cancer and oncology, and started research, which has always been supported by the Prostate Cancer Foundation. So to see this partnership between the Prostate Cancer Foundation and the VA is just unbelievable. It's amazing. Because now we have a chance to offer the veterans the best of everything. We can bring the tools of precision medicine to our veterans. So what is precision medicine? Essentially, it's a paradigm shift. It's kind of a change in the concept of how we treat cancer. So instead of treating everyone based on the site of their disease, like prostate cancer, breast cancer, we're looking for that Achilles heel, which is actually coded in the tumor itself. So we read the code of the tumor, and we look for signs that the tumor may respond to specific medications that are now newly available. And so that's what we're doing here.
There's no quiz, but if you go to slide 2.
Exactly.
It's a big data problem.
So essentially what we can now offer our veterans is, especially the veterans with advanced prostate cancer, is testing of their genome. So we basically read out their tumor genome, and then if they have certain code in the genome that makes them eligible to try some new treatments, they're invited to participate in clinical trials that are now ongoing at the VA, like the one that was just described in the video, and they have a shot at more durable remission for their advanced disease. And at the same time, another great service, of course, that the veterans are doing, they never stop serving, interestingly, is at the same time when they enter these trials, we can collect their tumors and we can profile them more deeply. And this is going to allow us then to later figure out, link who responded with what their genome, what the rest of their genome looked like. So we'll learn new things about these tumors that respond, as well as a lot about the tumors that don't respond.
Slide 3, please. And actually, just to make a point, it's as if veterans getting the world's best cancer care are actually serving again with consent for how to actually accelerate the better development of better anti-cancer medicines.
Yeah, so
and it's a team.
exactly, it's
right?
a team effort. I mean, really, we've been able to assemble an amazing team at the West Los Angeles VA that's multidisciplinary. We have integral components in the medical field as well as support staff. We include medical oncologists, pathologists to help us identify the cancers that we send out for sequencing. The urologist, oftentimes the urologists are the first line. We see the patients, we diagnose them with prostate cancer. And then of course radiation oncology is an important component with a lot of our patients with advanced prostate cancer. And a variety now of clinical coordinators who are now trying to reach every man who walks in the door with prostate cancer to make sure that they can be offered a clinical trial if they're eligible.
And next slide 4. So it was a great team. We're at $2.5 million of the $50 million commitment that we've made now to grow a national network. Most Americans have no idea that telemedicine and care in the VA is superior to any private health system in our country for stroke and heart attack. And Deborah doesn't get a chance, and certainly Peter doesn't get a chance to say that heart attack and stroke outcomes for veterans are superior, actually, because of, if you just look at who lives and because of the telemedicine capability and logistical ability in the Veterans Administration. But a foundation can talk about it, and we're talking about this online. But the Captain America Shields are the centers where we have philanthropy, $2.5 million, $500,000 a year to put in those kinds of teams modeled after the basically the West LA VA and the Puget Sound VA, which were leaders and building these kinds of centers of excellence where every patient who gets a prostate cancer biopsy gets the tumor sequenced. And there are terabytes of data actually that come out of this evaluation. Anyway, but the idea is to have the full national network and off the back of telemedicine capability for heart attack and stroke, have basically every veteran with prostate cancer get basically the benefit of a full understanding of what's driving their tumor and get, again, the right new medicines. We have Elizabeth Berry here, her family philanthropically supporting the Manhattan VA, which for the very first time, when a veteran walks in with advanced prostate cancer or with early prostate cancer, will get the same standard of care, again, as anyone walking to Memorial Sloan Kettering who drove in Lamborghini. And we have part of the network still to stand up. We have 6 centers, but the goal is 15. We're very proud of the start. We couldn't have done it actually without a set of a 5-year partnership. We've put $50 million down, but nothing would happen if it weren't for the entire Veterans Administration as an amazing platform for this. So, Deborah, why don't you talk about your job at the VA?
Terrific.
Because you're the air boss.
I'm the air boss, I just found out. So I'm 4 months into this job, and like Isla, there is no place I would rather be. The veterans deserve first-rate clinical care in every aspect of the services we deliver, and I think our partnership with the Prostate Cancer Foundation demonstrates what we can do when we partner together with people like the Prostate Cancer Foundation and Ambassador Earle Mack. It enables us to have a major impact on areas that are of critical importance to veterans. We have a very ambitious agenda at the VA to deliver this level of care in every area that's important, and to be a leader in clinical care, not just with the veteran community, but with Americans as a whole. And we're doing that in a couple of ways that Jonathan alluded to. In our Million Veterans program, 630,000 veterans already have donated blood to have their genome profiled. And when we are finished, and who knows if 1 million is going to be the ceiling, we will have the single largest database in the world of genetic information, which can then be mined in partnership with industry and foundations to identify insights into diseases and potential cures for veterans and for all Americans. And we think we are on the way to the VA being in a position to drive leading-edge clinical trials that find these cures, and for people who are not served by the VA to want to participate in those clinical trials. And to kind of have a partnership across therapeutic areas between the VA and other centers of excellence that deliver health care to find cures in areas where the VA has strength and where our partners have strength. So my message to you is the VA has a very ambitious agenda to deliver this level of quality of care to our veterans across the healthcare spectrum. We can only do that with your partnership, your sharing of your expertise, your philanthropic resources, so that together we can best leverage our strengths to reach these kinds of outcomes that you saw in the video. We wake up every day thinking about that patient and thinking about we need to prioritize spending our time to make a difference of that magnitude. So thank you for letting me share.
Sure, but before I get to Peter, there's one address, it's a block from the White House, and there's actually somebody in charge, and that's actually historic in the history of the VA, since General Bradley was assigned by President Truman to organize what is the modern VA for healthcare. There was no place, if you had a great idea from LinkedIn or you had a great idea from the Prostate Cancer Foundation, there was no one office. But now there's one office that actually reports to the undersecretary and the secretary through the chief of staff. There's one place that any corporation, any major philanthropist can go with an idea to make a difference in the healthcare of veterans.
So come see me.
And then Peter, for the civilians, why don't you explain what being chief of staff means? But for all of us, you're the chief of staff of the Veterans Administration and highly energetic. When you look at PTSD as maybe 20% of those coming back, and you look at prostate cancer as a model, but 40,000, the VA is the largest healthcare system in the country getting prostate cancer, and we have a significant number of Agent Orange exposures from the Vietnam conflict we're still caring for, myself included. What does the chief of staff do, and what do you see going forward these kinds of partnerships could do?
Sure. Well, thank you for that, because really the opportunity is for me to run interference for Deborah and our great doctors that we have to do these kind of things. I mean, I remember the first time equine therapy came up for me was actually at the Quezon at the Old Guard, and we just made it up as we went along because people reacted to that, and to see people step up with this kind of partnership and actually professionalize what we intuitively knew worked and actually make it a regimen was something that's encouraging. But as the chief of staff, I'd like to say that there was some magic wand I get to wave, but really it's just a lot of hard work and encouragement and really finding the right talent and the right folks to take those leadership roles. And then when you find them, encourage them, provide them the tools and resources they need to push those forward. What's encouraging about this one, though, is finding folks like you and Ambassador to partner with, because I think what we all realize is the VA still is a government functioning entity, which has all the constraints that come along with it. So any way to leapfrog over our own constraints by those partnerships that we can reach outside, which frankly the Secretary of the VA has some pretty extraordinary authority to do, outside even our friends at DOD. I mean, we actually have some flexibility that we don't always in the past have taken full advantage of, and so anytime we can find those opportunities, we seize them and do as much as we can.
Well, we went from concept and a business plan or a national strategic plan to an MOU for 5 years and $50 million down in under 3 months across 2 administrations. So because the Office of Strategic Partnerships have been created. So for us, it's proof positive
that we can do it.
That not only you can do it, but then you can measure the number of veterans that benefit, and then report that back. Yes, Earle, you wanted to say something?
When we were at the New York State Council on the Arts, we commissioned a study about public-private partnerships. And we brought in McKinsey and Company to do the study. And they found that every $1 that's granted by the public can raise $10 to $15 from private money.
This is a
means-
Milken operation, and that would be reasonable leverage.
And if you want to look at that, it's a 1999 study by McKinsey and Company, and it details how they've done this study. So public-private partnerships are very important, and we accomplished a lot through these public-private partnerships during the 3 years, my 3 years at the New York State Council on the Arts.
So in a way, Deborah Scher runs the Office of Leverage for Progress for VA patients. If we can, the Fulcrum, basically, you've got the Fulcrum office.
Yeah, and we're going to build on the network that you're building on. We're not going to wait.
Right. Why don't you talk a little bit about why it could scale for all cancer patients in the VA?
So for those of you who don't spend your time in clinical research, you need a basic infrastructure in order to run a clinical trial. Things that are not glamorous when it comes to philanthropy. You need data managers, you need space for them to sit, which is often expensive and unavailable in hospitals, and you need nurses to help the physicians do the trials. And then you need people to interface with the patients. And we just didn't have that at the VA, and we didn't have any excess available resources. And the Prostate Cancer Foundation stepped in and said, we're going to help you do that, because we realize that even if we make these award grants and we recognize young investigators and give them money to do research, if they can't do the research, we don't get anywhere. So kudos to them for being willing to take on the sort of unsexy, unglamorous part of this. And then as we're building out the network, there's no reason why we can't also be doing breast cancer trials and lung cancer trials and do all of the disease areas that are so important to our veterans and that they're suffering from. And then take our telehealth network, which the VA leads the country in telehealth visits. Over 800,000 visits just in the last year, serving over 330,000 veterans. And we are in conversations with the FCC about extending internet access to low-income and rural veterans who don't currently have the infrastructure to participate in that. And we're reaching out to industry, Comcast and other providers to say, hey, you need to help us with this. This is important.
It'd be a really good idea for Comcast as a truly patriotic act to do it.
Yes, absolutely. And so we're talking to them about doing that. Exactly.
I was going to say, Prudence, you want to scale. You're going to have a phase 2 result. If the early data is validated, is published in a major medical journal, with a white piece of paper and your wish is granted because Peter O'Rourke's listening at the other end. What's the national scaling assessment?
If I can get my wish?
You got your white piece of paper and your wish.
So I basically see this going 2 ways. I mean, this is an open clinical trial. As Deborah is saying, it's expensive to do research. Right, you have to have research assistants and people putting your data in. That's very expensive. So to do a randomized clinical trial would be great.
And how many patients do you estimate that would be, PTSD patients?
I mean, I think you'd want as many as you can in each group, 60 or 70 in each group at least. So that's a big study, you know, and careful evaluations, the MRIs and everything.
Right. And you'd want to do it in several other places, right?
Yeah, we'd want to see it's not
across
just us doing it, we train people. The other thing, and some of the equine organizations like PATH is very interested in, even having a manual that people in the field can use, because there's not one.
You mean a field manual?
Yeah, just how to do what we're doing, right? And
but it'd be digital.
You know, and
you could
sort
download
of have
it anywhere.
how you do it and train people in the methodology.
Right.
Because right now there are a lot of programs out there that do equine therapy, and they're all doing something different.
And one thing we're very interested in with Peter, and then I want to wrap it up just because we could go on. We're pretty cranked up here, so we could go on for a long time. But with enough pilot data, one could easily engage the NIH, American tax dollars, basically still the leading life-saving basic research organization on the planet for doing basically the national studies, so it's reduced to practice. But we need more data, and that's really where philanthropy in the history of medical research has always made a difference. But it could be corporate philanthropy, right, Deborah?
Absolutely.
Right. It could be even the people that making those MRIs. But anyway, I wanted just to call out that there's one other aspect of our partnership. It's two ways. We've learned an enormous amount about what the military does really well. And for precision oncology of the future, you need great chief petty officers, which the VA doesn't have a budget for, but they're really advanced practice. They're really precision oncology advanced practice nurses. Artie Rabin, who's a major philanthropist who's in the House right now and in the room, is very interested in philanthropy, basically for creating kind of this role inside the VA. It'd be better if they were veterans who cared, who had advanced practice training and also understood how a lot of the big data worked, to sit down with a patient and explain there's a drug for lung cancer that can work and you have colon cancer, but you share the same target gene. So we also see sort of maybe this program in memory of his wife, Selma's Angels, of having basically a new, kind of nursing as a key part of the team, because the future of conquering all cancer is actually a team, including a pathologist and an interventional radiologist. So we're really transforming in the VA the whole model of cancer care. But the military also has a lot to teach us also about process improvement. And it was interesting at the breakfast talking about innovation. You have these innovation centers around great discipline, but permitting testing and innovation. That's actually the future of all healthcare. It just needs innovation, basically innovation capital, which would come early from philanthropy. So, Isla, you get the last word, and we can take a couple questions. If you had a white piece of paper and your wish is granted, you guys at the West LA VA are moving very quickly. What would you ask for in the next 36 months?
Wow. Okay. Well, I think first of all, a lot of our wishes have been granted by this partnership, because I cannot tell you the difference in terms of what we can offer our patients now in terms of precision medicine, genomic testing. It makes it so much easier. However, I do still think our biggest obstacle is still accessing patients and identifying those who are eligible for our clinical trials. And so that's really somebody kind of sitting in the clinics, making sure, reviewing those charts and making sure we're inviting the men who are eligible. Because it gets so busy in those clinics, and the primary provider doesn't always have time to reflect and think about, wow, which clinical trial will this person fit in to? So I think if we had more of that, we could really scale up a lot very quickly.
I guess we have time for a couple of questions if there are some. Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning, everybody. I think it's on now. Okay. Major Kentar. I'm actually active duty for 11 years, got out and I'm in the reserves now. And there's a unique problem that I've found with the reserves. I've had a lot of guys that were active duty, spent time in combat, Afghanistan, Iraq, and we're deploying them again. And when they get back, there's not the same resources. There's not the same network of people to assist them when they get back, because it's, you get back, you get 3 weeks, you go back right in your civilian job. So I just recently, on March 17th, had one of my Marines commit suicide. So thankfully, the number is coming down from 22 to 20. And that's amazing, but still, one is too many, right? So my question is the VA aware of this? Is there any other resources other than PHOP that's out there, which is the Psychological Health Operations, something out there that it's hard to get in touch with them? They are helpful, but again, it's kind of telecommuting there. And the only thing I can think of for my Marines is after this happened, a lot of them were very angry. He was a very popular Marine. He was well-liked. He was in everything. And it was, we just need to talk more. And I think that's something that we should do, and it's not very open in the military culture, is talking about our problems, our struggles, and whatnot. So I'm looking for suggestions for my Marines. I'm looking for suggestions for the service members out there that try to find community in the reserves after they get out, and just looking for things in general, and maybe making you aware of something that might not be out there.
There are a number of, it's an issue that everybody struggles with. There are a number of philanthropic efforts around peer-to-peer counseling, and also around building communities for veterans when they come back, so that they don't have to navigate a long list of well-intentioned foundations. But we should talk about specifically where you think the issues are, and we'll try to make those connections.
Other questions?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to add just a little bit to that. So you're exactly right. I mean, at the peer-to-peer level, at the local level, there's a lot of good people doing yeoman's work. I mean, they're doing some great works, and there's some gaps right now. But gaps we've recognized, just like you, there's the DoD-VA partnerships on several different levels addressing the transitional period. My fear is that we're focused on that main separation piece, but suggesting and making sure we include reservists that are coming back and forth multiple times on multiple deployments. So there's a long-term work being done to address that, to readdress, I think, transition. We do this every decade or so. If you've been around the military for a while, this is not an issue that's newer. But what we didn't have, I think, before, I mean, I separated twice. So I've got this early 90s experience and then this later 2000s experience that's shared. And I don't ever remember getting much of anything at those times. So we've recognized that on the VA side. We're trying to draw closer to DOD so that there's not this gap of time. But it's still, I mean, it's a real thing. And I think by ignoring it or saying it's not an issue for us on the government side, we're not doing what we should. But a lot of good organizations have gone out there, and a lot of great partnerships that have sprung up, and trying to figure out the appropriateness of them.
Just a comment.
Excuse me.
But is that telling that story to the Man of War project? I mean, telling that on camera creates a story, and the Milken Institute is very interested in stories that change everything about the need, but also a potential intervention if you could scale. And then you need, as an oncologist, you need an ascertainment. I mean, basically, sorry, I can't help it. I'm also the only. Can't help it. Go ahead.
Yeah, we had some people who came to our program who had always felt very, disconnected. And we have one gentleman who said this should be required for everybody coming back. Because just having the group experience with somebody else who's going through the same thing. Now, not everybody has PTSD, but it's not like, when you do a clinical trial, you have to start with a specific problem. But eventually it could be applied to other kinds of issues. So, but you have to start somewhere. And that's where we're starting. But eventually it could be applied to different kinds of settings.
Or it could be like cancer screening, literally, that everyone gets screened in a way that, for those that could benefit,
right.
You're just not left in the dark. Every single returning, right? I mean, that's great.
Let's talk about your question.
Yeah.
I think it was a very good question. I think the answers were very good. But what Man of War is trying to do is to finish this study, and thanks to public-private partnerships like the VA, which we look forward in the future to work very closely with, to apply for licenses. Finishing the study, we will circulate a manual that will be a professional manual that will be peer-reviewed. And there are so many ad hoc programs going on across America right now, and this will ground them in professionalism and scientific knowledge. So you can go to one of these programs in any state and apply, and these staffers there will be well trained, because we look forward to a center like Columbia Medical Center to process all these applications for equine assisted and adaptive therapy for the patients in PTSD. So we look for a manual that will give the validation to these studies, and you will be able to go into one of these studies, and your peers will be able to go into one of these studies. We also think that this will help children eventually, and that was our goal, because the minds of a lot of your trainees and veterans from Iraq, Afghanistan are not really mature. They go right from high school, and either they're at risk or they want to join up in the military, and they go right from high school into the military. So they think a lot like children.
Thank
but
you.
that will be available all over the country.
We're out of time, but I'd be happy. We're out of time, but we'd be happy to go right here and keep answering questions. But I got the hook in the back. Thanks so much, everyone, for participating.